Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this video we'll take a quick overview of some of the new tools that are used for data analysis, at least the ones that caught my attention anyway. The first one allows you to combine SQL and Python in a sort of seamless manner, and it's a Python package that's called ipython-sql. And the second is not so much for Python, but it is really interesting and definitely worth trying. It is Azure Data Studio, and it is from Microsoft, and you can install it both in Windows and Ubuntu. So as you all know, most of the data that you want to analyze, especially in an enterprise setting, is stored in a database. So this will be our focus for today, interacting with data that is stored in a database. And the most primitive way to do it is using a CLI or command line. And in here you can see the query and the result set that is returned from Postgres. And this is good for getting started with databases, but it's not really useful for deep diving into the data and analyzing it properly. Another software that you can use for interacting with the data is something like pgadmin or Postgres admin. If you're using Microsoft SQL Server, there is a tool called SSMS or SQL Server Management Studio. If you're using Oracle, there is Oracle SQL Developer. So these kinds of tools gives you a nice user interface to interact with data and administer it properly. And as you can see here, you can run your query and you will see the result set. And also, for example, you can generate ER diagrams or entity relationship diagrams that help you see the relationships that you have between the different relations or different tables in your database. And this is generated automatically by pgadmin. So this is very good. But in today's let's say ecosystem and the need to analyze data better, mostly nowadays with the, let's say, Python ecosystem, you interact with the data, you load it, and then you interact with it using pandas, and you plot it, etc. So this is a nice package that I found. It's called ipython-sql, and you can see all the details here and how to install it and how to configure it properly. So this is a quick overview. First, of course, you load it using some IPython magic, and then you construct your connection string to your database, and then use percentage sign percentage SQL or IPython magic command for SQL and the connection string that you have just constructed. And then you can simply run your queries, and the result set will appear in a similar manner to a pandas data frame. So as you can see here, I'm not really using SQL Alchemy or anything to connect to the database and then loading the data. No, this is me using the query directly hitting the database. So this is useful, for example, if you have a large amount of data and you want the database to do all the heavy lifting, and you want a nice way to interact with the data, and instead of loading the entire data into your computer to analyze. As you can see here, I'm doing a select count star from my table. You can see the result set. If I want to see sort of like a describe table, I can look into the information schema, and you can see for each column the data type and the database, etc. And one nice thing is that you can use the SQL um, command from the package, and use a query, and store it in a variable. And then once stored in a variable, you can uh, construct a pandas data frame, and of course you can do then anything you want with it. For example, here I'm plotting the data that is returned from uh, my SQL command. So final comments about this package is that it has good integration between SQL and Python pandas, and it's really good if you're also going to do some machine learning afterwards. So this is a really nice package to have. In my opinion, it's not really a substitute for software like SSMS or pgadmin or Oracle SQL Developer. That still is my go-to software for, um, let's say, doing some main queries and administrating the database properly. One thing that I don't like is that it doesn't show execution time by default. So every time I need to put the time command for it to show the time that it took. And another thing is that there is no proper syntax highlighting. The syntax highlighting is all over the place. I'm sure there's a hack somewhere to fix it, but it would have been nice to have proper syntax highlighting. So this is the first tool, the ipython SQL package. The second tool is the Azure Data Studio, and it's sort of like VS Code, but specialized for data and data analysis and these sort of things. It is sort of like if you ever used SSMS, this is like the next generation of that tool. So in here you can of course write queries, and the results set will show. And the good thing here that is not available in here is that you can filter your data, search for it, and you can also sort directly. So you can interact with the data properly here, and you can save or export as CSV, Excel, JSON, or XML. And it has some nice properties as well. You can do a chart if you want. I have the chart here shown, and also it can be extended with some extensions. So there is one extension called Sandance for visualization. So if you can see here, let me rerun it. Okay, so it gives you some nice visualization for your data directly without doing any code, without writing any code. So for example, here I have some e-commerce data, and if I want to see the x-axis for the event time, and here for the y-axis I can filter or change. For example, here I'm choosing the event type, and I can hide and show, and it shows you in a very nice visualization. And not only that, you can also do it in a 3D manner. So in here I can show, for example, the set axis, and I can interact with it, and everything. And this is I'm on Ubuntu, so this is very nice, to be honest, to have it. And yeah, and the other thing is that you can also have it in a Jupyter notebook style, and the result set will show like this, and you can also interact with it again, and you can save the cell, and you can have some default visualization or charting from Azure Studio, not from the extension that we saw here. And you can configure the chart as you want, but simple configuration, not like the extension that we saw here from Sundance. And yeah, you can run your queries again, very simple stuff. And the good thing here also is that you have um, sorry, is that you have syntax highlighting, and you also have IntelliSense as well. So that's really nice to have some auto completion features. The bad thing about it is that um, it has integration with Python. For example, I can change the kernel here, Python 3, and I can add a new cell called cell, and I can do, for example, print okay, and it works. And you can also import pandas and connect with a database and run your queries, etc. But the thing that I've seen is that it is not very friendly, or it's not very well done. So I would still want to use Jupyter Notebook uh, to uh, to interact with, let's say, as my go-to Python environment or software, instead of using this, because it's not really well done, to be honest. Otherwise, it would have been very nice to have this interleaving of code between SQL and Python. And that is all I wanted to show. Hopefully you found this useful, and see you next time.